Welcome to IAMCP Profiles and Partnership, the podcast that showcases how Microsoft partners and IAMCP members grow their businesses by collaborating with other partners across the Microsoft ecosystem. I'm your co-host, Anthony Carano, and in each episode we sit down with some of the most innovative and successful leaders in the Microsoft partner community to uncover the strategies, relationships, and insights that help them create more value for customers and accelerate growth through partnership. Today we're joined by one of the most respected analysts in the technology industry to answer those questions and help Microsoft partners better understand what comes next. I'm excited to welcome Jay McBain, Chief Analyst for Channels, Partnerships, and Ecosystems at Omdia. Jay is widely recognized as one of the world's leading experts on technology ecosystems, partner strategy, and channel transformation. For more than 3 decades, he's helped technology companies, Microsoft partners, and industry leaders understand where the market is heading and how to capitalize on emerging opportunities. A couple questions before we get started. What if the next 5 years create more opportunity for Microsoft partners than the last 50 combined? And what if the biggest threat to your business isn't AI itself, but being unprepared for how your customers are buying, partnering, and making decisions in the AI era? We'll uncover these questions and more. In this conversation, we'll explore why AI is creating one of the largest opportunities in the history of the technology industry, why 82% of Microsoft partners say they aren't ready for what's coming next, how buyer behavior is changing, and what partners must do today to position themselves for growth in the AI era. If you're a Microsoft partner looking to better understand the future of the ecosystem and where your biggest opportunities lie, this is an episode you won't want to miss. Let's get started. Well, Jay, welcome to the podcast. We're so excited to have you on.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited about this.
Excellent. Well, before we dive right in, I know we've got a lot of ground to cover, here in this episode. But before we do, for those who aren't familiar with you, why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in the Microsoft channel for 32 years now. I spent about half that time selling laptops and desktops with IBM and Lenovo. Spent time building a channel software company, built almost 10 years now as an analyst covering the world of channels and partnerships and alliances and ecosystems. So I wake up every morning thinking about partners and thinking about the opportunity as we look ahead to the AI era.
Excellent. And on that note, as you've talked about, you've described AI as a multi-trillion dollar market shift. Why do you believe this moment is like one of the most important moments in the history of the Microsoft partner ecosystem?
Yeah, there's an interesting thing. About 57 years ago, we landed on the moon. A year later, the technology industry became the fastest growing. And for 56 straight years, it's been the fastest growing industry. So we're in this, space race moving into technology race, but the 56 years was not linear. And so as a Microsoft partner, you'd recognize, if you're old enough, the 20 years of mainframes and minis, all changing for Microsoft August the 12th, 1981. The first version of PC-DOS version 1 and MS-DOS version 1.0. But that triggered a new era. We moved from mainframes into the client server era, which also ran about 20 years. In 1999, we had a small startup in San Francisco led by Mark Benioff, Salesforce, triggered a SaaS era. We had a few years later, Jeff Bezos thinking he could rent out some of Amazon's infrastructure in those non-busy days. But the cloud era really ran 20 years as well. So we've got these 20-year eras. It's the Taylor Swift version of our industry. But when we started seeing, and when our neighbors, our friends, our family started seeing the poetry and the music and the deep fakes, they came to us and said, did we just light up Skynet? This created this new 20-year era. And while the first couple of years were mostly consumer driven, ChatGPT becoming the fastest growing product in history, Anthropic becoming the fastest growing company in history, soon to be a multi-trillion dollar IPO in the next couple of weeks, NVIDIA becoming the most valuable company. This is the next 20 years. So we're in this mode now of what was the fastest and is the fastest growing industry. It took us 56 years to get to $6.07 trillion in hardware, software, services, and telco. That's what customers spend. We're going to double that in the next 3 to 5. There's a $7 trillion build out, 6.5 trillion according to Microsoft, but 7 trillion according to OpenAI and other NVIDIA and others. But somewhere in that range, we're going to double this industry, which took 56 years. We're going to double that in the next near term. And for partner's sake, we're not talking about where the trillions of dollars are and who's going to become trillionaires. That's fun fodder for the consumer world, to sell
Hmm.
magazines and, to sell, headlines that we click on social media. We're obsessed with the $267 billion of tech services that this is going to generate in the next couple of years, and the 35.3% growth rate that the best Microsoft partners are seeing today in AI. And so we're trying to get very specific and kind of pull away the consumer umbrella here and get right to business and say, what do we need to do? What decisions do we need to make today? What are the tactics? What are the specific things I need to do to go grab onto that opportunity?
Now, in light of all this just momentous, opportunity, you've also recently shared research showing that 82%, and I think I got that number right, 82% of Microsoft partners say that they're not ready for AI. Why do you think so many partners feel unprepared, and what exactly are they unprepared for?
Well, we did ask some follow-on questions, but we get to poll pretty close to 25,000 Microsoft partners around the world, and we can poll it based on history. Are you a VAR? Are you an MSP? Are you a regional system integrator? Are you an ISV of Microsoft's? We can kind of break it down by partner type. We can break it down by country, around 193 countries. But in the end, yeah, 82% of people came back and said, "Oh boy, this road to 7 trillion." A couple of reasons. One is that every day, literally every day, we wake up to big news. You
Mm.
wake up and you feel like sometimes a Star Trek captain and you ask for a damage report because, in the morning, NVIDIA has just made another multi-$100 billion agreement with someone. Anthropic has just announced something else. SpaceX announces they're going public, and now Elon Musk is going to be a trillionaire coming up in 7 days. Then, you get hit with these big, big stories with big, big numbers that it's hard to relate to. So you try to think back to, what does this mean for me? And so when 82% of people say, I'm nervous and maybe I'm not fully ready, it's translate all those really big things back to my territory, the customers that I cover, my prospects.
Mm.
What are they talking about? How can I go in and leverage my skills and sell advisory or consulting? How can I sell a design and architecture of what it looks like to my customer? How can I, go and procure and provision, deploy this? How can I implement or integrate it? What does a managed services contract look like in AI when my customer maybe expects me to be using AI and charge them a lot less than I would have in the past? So take it through the 200 elements of what I'm concerned about, and let's skip the $1 trillion talk and get right down to the nuts and bolts of it. And where can I go find my next $1 million? And so that's the concern. The follow-on question was, well, who do you kind of blame? And blame is the wrong word, but who would you say is most responsible for you not being prepared? And most of the partners pointed back to Microsoft as well as other vendors, the hyperscalers, the big SaaS companies, the big cybersecurity companies, the big infrastructure companies. I go through the entire, kind of motion of big vendors and say, listen, they haven't invested enough to get us ready to go and, certify us and build competencies and work together so that I can charge top dollar to my customer as I get them ready for this era. And the final question we kind of ask is, well, what could they do more of? If you're going to say that, Microsoft could do more of this or others, CrowdStrike could do more of this, or Dell or Lenovo or HP could do more, what could they do more of? And the answer was, well, we need more training. We need more workshops. We need more hands-on. We need, that ability to not just, write a couple of tests and get another certification that means nothing, to my customer. The other thing is interesting is that every 6 months, this technology is doubling in size. So what you did 6 months ago in AI no longer applies. And this is different than the Moore's law that we've lived on, where every 18 months the technology doubles at a transistor level. This is now a learning technology that's much different. One version, 3.5 of ChatGPT passes the bar exam in legal, and everybody puts that off. Well, they were bottom 10%, they barely passed. Well, 6 months later, they passed the test in the top 10%. So now ChatGPT version 4 is Harvard, Yale educated, in terms of writing the bar exam. Well, 6 months later, now we're talking only 12 months, like 1 year from that initial passing the test, they now write the test, proctor the test, and govern the test. So this is something that if you learned about, ChatGPT in the legal community in one version, 6 months later, all of a sudden everything you learned is wrong. Now, 6 months later it's wrong again. So there's this general feeling of trying to keep up. And what does training and workshops mean when I'm constantly going back to figure out where we are now and what it takes to drive that client forward? And again, charge top dollar for being able to drive our clients, into this era because they're as confused as we are.
So, and I appreciate you sharing that because it's actually triggered two piggyback questions for you. One is, as we're talking about both just the opportunity that's there, but also just the velocity, just the speed of the change that's occurring. What do you see for now specifically for SMB and mid market partners? Where do you see some of the biggest opportunities for them over? I'm thinking like the next 12 to 24 months, but that might be too far out. So I'll just kind of let you take that.
Yeah, and this is probably where the most confusion lies in AI because, back to the client server era, everyone got a PC. It didn't matter if you were a small flower shop or a major bank or major government. Kind of every knowledge worker gets a PC. Then we connected it to, kind of client server. We connected to a file server, an email server. And then at some point, everybody got a license to 365 for their email and for their, office products. And you saw that, in that license, even though, Microsoft would, charge different and have different licenses, 23 of them for each of those scenarios. But in the end, we all get access to Excel and email, Outlook, and access to other Microsoft technologies like Dynamics and other things. The same way it would allow a flower shop to execute at the same level as FTD, the biggest company in that industry, or a bank or a government. So it was always this normalized view of the world. And that was through, 40 years of our industry. Well, today it's different. If you are in SMB, and SMB, by the way, breaks up into 6 categories. There's a 1 to 9 employee, there's a 10 to 24, a 25 to 49, a 50 to 99. As you go up into mid market, the idea is, the average SMB managed service provider in Microsoft's world really focuses in on about a 50 to 150 employee target market. Big enough that they can spend on a recurring basis, small enough that they haven't built their own IT department and infrastructure and things like that. But if you're in that 150 to 150 target, none of your customers are doing AI in the way that an enterprise would or a big government would. They're not calling Sam Altman at OpenAI. They're not calling Dario at Anthropic. No one's calling Jensen at NVIDIA to buy a GPU to put beside the stove at their restaurant.
Hmm.
They are waiting right now. And they're waiting for the tech stack that they've invested in to bring generative and then agentic AI to them. So the best way to explain this is in an example. So, you have a restaurant, the restaurant maybe has a couple of locations. The restaurant wants to, utilize this new technology, and they've already invested in something like Toast or Square or Clover or one of the, multitude of solutions that you have people running around with tablets, at the restaurant with. And now that's a horizontal piece of technology. That restaurant didn't go buy Salesforce, ServiceNow, Workday, Marketo, NetSuite, HubSpot, to run each of their departments. They have one horizontal piece of technology that does their marketing and sales, does their operations, does their HR, but specific to that restaurant. It also works with Uber Eats. And now agentically, wouldn't it be great if there's a spike in Uber Eats orders? that automatically can trigger a food order to get ready for it, and then can also trigger staffing in your kitchen so that supply and demand is starting to match. And you, as an owner, don't have to be there 24/7 because it's pretty much the hardest business to run as a restaurant. Now, that's an agentic capability that works through side doors through every element of your business. There are 1,012 industries inside that SMB. So how you think about a flower shop, a tanning salon, a daycare center, or an MSP themselves in that category. You might be using ConnectWise or Kaseya or Enable or Ninja or Halo or SuperOps or Synchro or 25 other applications that are horizontal to your MSP business. And you're kind of waiting too, because you're not calling OpenAI or NVIDIA. You're waiting for the agentic capabilities to come to you. There are some people vibe coding on weekends and they have their open claw running and there's some really cool things going on. But in the end, the massive set of Microsoft partners are in wait mode just the way their customers are for those capabilities to come to them. Those capabilities are white labeled. So Toast in the restaurant example will be working with Microsoft or AWS. They'll be working up through the models. They'll be working up and cashing in on some of those GPUs. But that is all absolutely invisible to the customer. Now the partner needs to go in and introduce those capabilities, train your customer on those capabilities, connect the dots, and probably code a few more agents that are very particular to that restaurant's location, their business model, their customer base. There's so many opportunities around that. We need to get to that conversation quickly in SMB and mid-market, different than the way we're going to walk into a big bank or big pharmaceutical, big automotive company, or obviously a big government.
What do you see as, and just in your research, as like what's maybe holding them back from doing that? Is it the training issue?
Yeah, this is the 82% holdback is if I think about 1,012 categories of my
Hmm.
customer, and if I rethink the future of how to run a flower shop, now with a millennial age majority buyer who's fully digital, with them having integration first, that I don't just want to go to flowershop.com. I want that to be integrated into my own calendar, that I know when Mother's Day is, I know when my spouse's birthday is, I know, and I have all that integrated and I know what they love in terms of flowers. That's your new buyer. And to be digitally connected to your new buyer is about integrations. So how am I going to go in and talk about the future of flower shops with the owner of these businesses that I'm serving? This is where it's uncomfortable. I don't know what each of the 7 or 8 major flower shop applications are doing. I don't exactly know where their roadmaps are. Their partner program probably isn't to the level where they can train me and get me and the client ready. So again, I don't really know how to charge my customer for that advisory or consulting. I don't know how to build a proof of concept
Hmm.
to say, let's dabble over here and see if we can use that left to right, agentic models in the technology you already have. We're not in to buy a new product. We're not in buying new infrastructure. We're changing your business and we want to be an early adopter. And again, we're not very clear on the places that I can transact, that I can actually get value for my experience and the time it's going to take me to double click on that industry or double click on how this my client can get ahead of their competitors and jump ahead of the market. So there's got to be a commercial or economics that support that.
Hmm.
And again, I think that's a lot of the confusion. And it's not a tech confusion, it's a business or a delivery confusion.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I know Rudy, you've got some questions about like some of the changing buyers and go to market, and Jay kind of touched on a little bit about with the millennials. Rudy.
We're all experiencing the major changes taking place out there, and I really appreciate your insights in this. So, can you tell us, partners try to sell on technology features, and you've talked about that before, but the marketplace is changing, and you've also mentioned in some of your speeches that partners need to start selling on business outcomes. What does that mindset shift look like in practice?
Yeah, if you go to the GSIs, for example, go to an Accenture, Deloitte, and things, and or go to a consulting industry like McKinsey or Bain or Boston Consulting, they're kind of doing this shift as well, but they're further ahead because they're speaking it at a business level with the customer. And again, if you start the conversation around how do you increase your profit, by 20%? How do you increase revenue by double digits in a pretty tough environment? The global economy is growing at 2.7%. Your customers might be hurting and flowers might not be the thing, or tanning salons might not be the thing that are discretionary right now. So how do you grow at 4 times what the market is growing at or the GDP is growing at? That's a business conversation. And now when you start at business, it ends at technology, is to kind of drag that. This is what you need to do. This is best practices. This is how we would think about it. And outside in, here's, looking across the world at flower shops, here's what some of the best, the ones that are growing at 30, 40, 50%, here's specifically what they've done. And so that's the business conversation, which obviously is outcome based. I want to reduce my cost to acquire a customer. I want to win bigger deals faster. I want to continually renew and enrich. I want to get some subscription running, which, by the way, millennials love subscriptions. They grew up on Netflix. They grew up on Spotify. They're okay for $1 a month for a toothbrush for the rest of their lives. You're already serving them something they love. And again, if I can integrate into their lives, make them look like heroes, now I'm getting to that business outcome conversation where it's stickier revenue, it gets enriched over time. There's a huge business changing conversation. And so far you've never brought up the word Microsoft once. But when you're that, you're talking to that early adopter, you're talking to that business entrepreneur that says, yeah, I want to be on that path. Now you can get to the details of what you need to do with your people, your processes, programmatically, what you need to do with the technology. And now, you're not talking speeds or feeds. You're talking about a layered technology stack. You're talking about a layered investment area. And again, we don't need you to go spend $1 million as a customer, but here's where you do have to lean in. You have to lean in, by the way, pay me as a partner for guiding you down this path. But the proof of concept is going to look like this. And the cost, by the way, might be a new car. I mean, it might be a $20,000 investment. And entrepreneurs know this. You need to spend money to make money. You've heard that all the way up, growing up, regardless of the industry you're in. But it seems like AI is going to be a technology play, and it's going to change my industry forever. I either want to be on the front end of it, an early adopter, early majority, or, if I'm a laggard and I don't elect to go your route and talk about outcomes and invest ahead of the curve, I might be on the wrong end of this, i.e. I may not go out of business, but I just may not grow. I may grow at the same pace that my customers are growing at 2% instead of 20 or 30. That's the point, is to get out of the technology conversation and into the game-changing AI conversation, leading yourself to a point where you can, have an economic value for taking these customers through these, early moments in AI.
Well, you brought up a couple of good points there. Buying behavior and buyer behavior is definitely changing right now. And it's hard for partners to adapt to that. So how do they adapt, especially with millennials now making up the dominant technology?
Yeah, so the good news is we know way more about this buying than we ever did. And it's not theory, it's not a flywheel, it's not a force multiplier. I mean, it's not some fancy PowerPoint slides. It's literally the average buyer in a considered purchase, which this would be a considered purchase, is not unlike buying a car. There are 28 moments, measurable moments on average in a considered purchase. Now, if you start to think about the moments, if you buy a car, for example, 94% of people now are using ChatGPT or Gemini or Anthropic or something, Grok or something, to start the search. It used to be a few years ago, 81% of people would start with a Google search. And now that Google search is turning into a Gemini first answer. and they're prompting as they go through to do this. So that is changing right at the beginning of the 28 moments. But the rest of the 28 moments are actually pretty clear. As you buy a car, the first Google search or the first time you ask ChatGPT, it's going to tell you there are 365 brands of car. So if you want to go and start test driving cars, it's going to take you an entire year to test drive each brand. So you're not going to do that. So you better start defining whether I want an SUV or a sedan. I want a German, Japan, or US based car. Once you start narrowing things down, you're going to get to the point where there might be 3 or 4 choices. And so then I'm not enough of that. I might go to the manufacturer and put, the configurator together and put the rims on it, put the colors on it, put all the options. I'm going to get so smart as a buyer. I'm going to be smarter than the salesperson at the dealership. And I'm going to be smarter than the sales manager that quote unquote is trying to get me the deal. So I'm going to not stop there either. Now I know the car. I know everything about it. I've spent the moments learning deeply about it, all the good, the bad, the ugly that's out there. And then I'm going to go download the invoice price for the dealer. So I know what they're paying for the car. Then I'm going to go download the back-end rebates this month. Should I buy the car in June or July? Based on spiffs and back-end manufacturer rebates and stuff. Now I know that as well. And then before I ever get to the dealership, I'm going to go and find out what 5,000 people within 50 miles of me paid for that car in the last 30 days. So I'm literally looking at a bell curve at the exact, decimal point accuracy of probably on average what I'm going to walk out with. But I'm also going to see extreme cases, like the best negotiation possible. If you're literally related to the, car dealer owner or whatever, is going to be this. And the worst deal possible is going to be that. But it's a very narrow curve. Like it's within a few $100s. So once you've learned it to that level, you start to get to the point where I don't want to go to the dealer. Just Carvana the car to my driveway and hand me the keys. You know that I know that you know that I know. I more about the car and more about the deal and everything else. We know the bell curve is here. I want you to make money because I want to serve it. I want to take the car back to you to get serviced. I don't want to ship the car from 500 miles away. Listen, let's just not play this game. That's your modern buyer. And by the way, you can substitute car buy-in for buying Microsoft technology. The same thing. They're going to know so much after these 28 moments. They're not going to want to go through that configure price quote and the back and forth on discounts. And it is what it is. This is what it's going to look like. Azure, Dynamics, Teams, 365. Here's what the E7, E5, E3. They're going to be knowledgeable. And it's going to be that, within $100 left or right. And it's going to be, let's just avoid the whole dealership game. But you can help me a lot through the 28 moments. Guide me, advise me, help me. Because ChatGPT doesn't know all those things like it does in cars. So you have experience. You've done this at other customers that look like me. I need you to be part of those 28 moments. And by the way, I should be paying you for part of those 28 moments, to get me to that point. And then I know that 2/3 of our industry now, and most of Microsoft is subscription consumption based, soon to be micro consumption with tokens. So I understand that that's only the first 30 days with the customer. And now every renewal, every upsell, every cross-sell, and every enrichment, every 30 days forever is where it makes sense because Microsoft has moved 2/3 of its channel incentives post-sale. It's more important for Microsoft to get 108% renewals than it is for them in other areas of the customer journey. So when you're thinking about that, that's how Microsoft got ahead of Apple on the stock market. I don't have to invent a product in September and sell a lot of it by Christmas every year. There's a lot of stress in that. I just want a cash machine that's growing at 30%. And for every one of those dollars coming in at that growth level, they come out at 108 every time we renew it. That's the play. And as partners, we have to think about that as well. That's the kind of business we want to run. You can bank on it. You can predict it. And that's where your valuations go up. Your exits get better if you were ever bought by another partner or another private equity firm. This is completely your own business strategy as well. I just need to grow on the front end and I need to renew and enrich it larger. It has to be a cash machine and it's going to be way more valuable, probably 3, 4, 5 times more valuable tomorrow than it would have been to a buyer yesterday.
one of the things that you mentioned there triggered a conversation that I had with a partner a couple of days ago. Big MSP, big national MSP. But when he called me, he said, "I'm having this issue." And he says, "My salespeople are not having any luck right now reaching customers, not just reaching them, but selling, going through their sales motions and selling MSP services." So one of the things that you mentioned is now that, the modern partner has to become digital first. So what does that motion look like today? And how do you see it going, evolving into the near future?
Yeah, and this is advice, by the way, we give to vendors. We give it to Microsoft. We give it to distributors. We give it to partners. The modern buyer is very community driven. For all the digital side of their lives, we get absolutely overwhelmed with the noise and clutter. So all of us always have these people and places, names, faces, and places that we trust. And so if you look at our entire industry and every Microsoft partner, 500,000 partners, look at the 5 million people and ask them three simple questions. What do you read? Where do you go? And who do you follow? There's a reason they're listening to this podcast right now. There's a reason they trust Anthony and Rudy. There's a reason that they've come, because you can be overwhelmed every morning with press releases and everything else going on, and no one can consume it all. But I'm going to go back to my peer group, the place that I've trusted as I've built my business, and I'm going to, reflect and realize that there's 15 different ways that we are influenced, kind of in the way we think and what we take, in terms of our business and our customers. And it all comes down to percentages. Do you know that 12% of Microsoft's entire partner audience by people love podcasts? So 12% of 5 million are literally listening to this as their number one way that they get information, that they're influenced, etc. Now, there's 35% of the entire audience that love to go to your events. Because post-COVID, there's this idea of pressing the flesh, the hallway conversations, that hotel lobby bar late into the night with even competitors, sitting around you, trading stories, asking them what they're doing, what's working, back and forth. But going around, there's people that read magazines. There's people that join associations and get on the board of different associations like this one. There are people that love peer groups, sitting in a boardroom with, 10 other people. So there's all these different ways. There's analysts like me that they might trust to give us the numbers and give us the way forward. There are vendors that they trust outside of Microsoft that have always done them right. There's distributors they might trust. Really large ones like TD SYNNEX or Ingram or Arrow, or very small niche ones that are local to their country or their zone. But there's 15 different ways that we build this trust. And this goes for your customers too. If you're having trouble getting to your customer, you're probably not swimming in their lanes. And so the way to the customer is always through the names, places, and faces of where they've built their business and the people that they trust. And if you can enter in and get that influencing the influencer right, you don't have to go to every flower shop conference or every tanning salon conference, especially if you have a myriad of, customers. But you do have to participate and get into their zones of trust through other people, places, and influencers that they already trust. That's how to win markets today. And there's just so much of a defense mechanism for all of us that we've been absolutely swallowed up by noise and clutter, that and this is what AI is going to end up doing, is it's going to be more and more and more and more, which is going to send all of us back to our roots, back to caves and back to tribes and back to the places we started. By our survival is going to be connected to a very few amount of people and a very few amount of places and things that I can get sanity. And I can look people in the eye and I can, connect to where I need to go and filter out 99% of the other noise and get to signal. That's the new way you win as a partner, is surrounding your customer, hopefully becoming one of those areas of trust. But the average customer today in the Microsoft world has 6.3 partners they trust. So many partners grew up in a world where you were the single throat to choke. You were that single trusted advisor. Well, millennials don't play that game. They play a team sport. So they understand that their buying role is different than others. They understand that their industry, I mentioned 1,012 industries. They understand the geography they're in brings different compliance and regulatory and other challenges, sovereignty challenges. They understand that the segment they're in, 50 people versus 500 versus 5,000, completely different capacity and capabilities. They understand that there's 2,262 categories of SaaS, and SaaS only makes up 10% of our industry. You know, how complex the product layers are, and you can't be an expert in everything. And then finally, what makes a great consultant may not make a great managed service provider. What makes a great implementation partner may not make a great architect. For the hundreds of things the customer may need, you know, I have to zone in on who's the best of the best. So now a millennial just says, you know, on average, I'm going to have 6.3 people around me that I trust. And if I have a legal, accounting, or regulatory question, I can go to that person. If I want to know how Azure can connect to, you know, ChatGPT, OpenAI, and how that can be done securely, I'm going to go to somebody else, and vice versa. All the things that you're going through in the 28 moments, I'm building a team, and you're going to be a team player in those zones. So that's a lot of change happening at once, but it's a different mindset how to win in AI than how to win in cloud, and then how you would have won maybe in client server.
That's a tremendous amount of evolution that the partner channel is going through. So thank you so very much for your insights. Anthony, back to you.
Yeah, I do have it's spurred, I mean, a lot of questions. We're going to have to do this again. But one thing I was going to ask, just from what you're seeing, is how, I mean, just with the rate of change, the amount of noise in this out there, coupled with just the availability of access to information for the customer to get smarter, more informed, further along in the process. What are maybe one or two things that you would say that you're seeing that as a partner can be one of those 6.3 and have the greatest influence across those 28 moments? What would be maybe just a couple things that you would say, listen, if you're going to do anything, do this?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would do is the next time you call on a client, and I'm not talking about a small flower shop anymore, but you call on a regular client that might have 100 or 150 people,
Mm-hmm.
go through the guest book when you're signing in, if they allow you to. Flip back, the accountant, the lawyer, the digital agency, everybody's signing in to that client. About an 80 to 90% chance they're talking tech. So realize that that may not be your forte, talking to a CMO about a MarTech stack that has 15,553 elements, ISVs. That might not be your slice, but how that gets incorporated, how that gets connected to AI, how that becomes compliant, how it becomes regulatory, how cybersecurity can protect that, how that data is backed up, that is your forte. But understand that everyone signing into that guest book is a potential partner of yours, because they're going to be in 10 or 20 other deals at the same time. And they're going to get to the point of the deal where I actually don't know how to secure that. I actually don't know what compliance or governance looks like around that. I'm a marketing agency. I just do MarTech, ad tech. This is my slice. This is my specialty. You need to talk to Anthony, who knows that stuff. Oh, you just asked a legal question. That's neither of our forte. You need to talk to Susan, about that. So this is the sharing. How do I get into the next 20 deals that agency's in? They invite us in. But in the next 20 deals that we're working in, when they start to ask, MarTech questions and how, we connect to these, ISVs and stuff, now you might invite them in. This whole building a network locally around your clients and having these partnerships yourselves. Much like Microsoft has a partner system, you do too. And the ecosystem that connects around your focused territory or your focused customer. And you need to know the other 5.3 people.
Mm.
And what you're going to find again is it's not a million people. In your local, environment, there might only be 100 people that own those other 5 spots 80% of the time. And if we all got together and shared our own community and we had our own beers at the hotel lobby bar locally and we got into our own network, our pipelines might triple in size because we're spread out and we're covering the market, and ChatGPT and Gemini are recommending us to clients, and we all come as a group. We come as a team, and somebody plays the quarterback, and that's the most profitable role, the orchestrator of all this, and that's a great place to be. But you have to have wide receivers, you have to have running backs, you have to have a line blocking for you. I mean, there's going to be players on the field, and sometimes, again, you're the backup. Sometimes you just come in for a couple of minutes for your specialty, but sometimes you're handed the ball, and you have to go win the game. But I want to be on every field. I want to be in every game, and this is a whole partnering element, partnering and partnering, and all of Microsoft is doing now with their marketplace is multi-partner deals and recognizing that there's no one partner in the world. And again, you could be Accenture with 786,000 employees.
Hmm.
They don't do all things to all people all the time. Accenture is one of the 6.3. We're one of the 6.3. Our friends are part of the 6.3. And we're just going to keep, this is a winning team. This is winning business outcomes for the customer. And the more we win, the more the large language models are going to tell the next clients that, hey, you want to hire this winning team over there. That's kind of where I want to be 3 to 5 years from now.
I love it. I love it. It's interesting. Because when we started this podcast, it was mainly, gathering stories about partner A, partner, connecting, with partner, working with partner B to, co-create value for, a customer. And what's been interesting, Jay, is here recently, a lot of the interviews we've had, it's gone beyond that. Like we had one where it's this consortium of 8 partners, right? Collaborating together, and creating, 35 different solutions, across that, that partner stack. Had, another one, I've had several of these, here as of late. So it's interesting to hear what you're saying about with the 6.3, partners, and just some of the things that we're encountering, and just as we're interviewing partners within the IMCP community are doing some of what you're talking about. So it's pretty exciting. So,
And it's only getting worse. Because, by the way, if you want to go up level, which every partner should be trying to go up market as much as possible,
yeah,
most of the AI profitability and growth rates are, in that larger segment, into medium, mid market, low enterprise. But understand that that 6.3 is an average. It goes to 8, it goes to 10. I
sure,
mean,
sure.
the teams get bigger, the more complex and the larger the deals are. So, understanding by segment and everything else, it's always going to be a team sport. And again, you're known for something. You're known as not all things to all people all the time, but you're known for, catching that ball in the end zone, and you do it better than anybody else. Every single customer is going to want to have you, out as wide receiver, on that team.
Well, imagine too, especially for like the smaller partners, being able to, it's a way by adopting this approach that you're talking about, it's a way to keep up with just the rate of change, right? That's happening, and to be able both on the technology side, but also adapting to the various customer needs. And it's, basically being able to, win more together, mentality. So no, that's awesome. Let me ask you this. I just got really one more question here. And I really appreciate your time. This has been fantastic. If we were to, I'm gonna put you on the spot with this one. If we were to have this conversation again a year from now, which I'd love to have this conversation again, by the way, but so maybe I should say, rather than if, when we have this conversation again, a year from now, what do you think will have changed, most dramatically, in the Microsoft partner ecosystem?
Yeah, and Microsoft's making a lot of changes. Talking about noise and clutter, they cut 2/3 of their global distributors. They cut out partners less than $1,000. They forced every partner at 300,000 to 1 million to now have indirect relationships. So they have to go through distribution, not have a, channel account manager at Microsoft. So they went to a point system first. They're making marketplace changes and fees, faster than anyone. So Microsoft, for the 35,000 vendors that we track, are always at the front of the line. But that's on the flip side of it. They've also outgrown AWS, their lead competitor on cloud, 27 quarters in a row.
Mm.
So over the last 5 years of disruptive changes in channel strategy and programs and being front of the line for making changes, they've also been right. And so now these recent changes on licensing going from 23 to 1, and then telling big resellers that it's probably coming back direct in the token world. There's no way a customer is going to be resold tokens. It's going to be consumed, and they already have, between AWS and Google, over $1 trillion of credits. So they're being really open and transparent in terms of how they see the next 3, 5, 10 years playing out. They're trying to be as open and transparent as they can of what makes a winning partner in 2026, 2028, 2030, 2032. So listen openly, listen to analysts like myself who are trying to dissect everything they're doing, both inside of Redmond as well as what comes out in press releases, to say what makes a Microsoft Partner of the Year last year looks different than this year.
Mm.
When you're that Microsoft Partner of the Year, all of a sudden you get acquired by CDW by the time you've made it back to your table with a piece of glass. That was AWS's Partner of the Year Mission. When you're Google's Partner of the Year, SADA, Insight has bought you by the time you make it back to your table. When you're ServiceNow's Partner of the Year, it's a completely different set of metrics. It's a completely different set of behaviors. And again, a good entrepreneur is always going to be on the front end of this, trying to get it all deciphered into what do I do next? Pick up the phone. Who do I call next? What do I click on next? What training do I take next? What does great look like?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's where I should be thinking about. So looking forward, I will always measure it looking backwards. Did you realize the new buyer? Did you realize the alliances and the integrations that they require? Did you realize that you need to be a team player? Did you realize that the new 28 moments looks really different than it did in previous generations? If you're picking up on these things and executing, I think you're going to be in a different realm. And I think you might be up on the main stage picking up a piece of glass. From Microsoft, once you get to the point where you're making $3 or $4 in services for every dollar that Microsoft is making in product revenue, that's the new forward-looking Partner of the Year. It's not who sells the most. And it's not who makes their quarterly numbers every quarter and it's reliable on resell. It's just a different world. And so that old world isn't going away, but the old world isn't going to allow you to grow with the bigger numbers that we've talked about today.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Jay, thank you. That was amazing. For those listening who would either like to connect with you or be able to access, just some of the additional, ongoing content that you provide, what's some of the best ways to reach out and connect?
Yeah, probably Microsoft Property LinkedIn. I have a LinkedIn newsletter. So the numbers that I dropped, every single one of them has a 30-page report. I tend to share everything publicly. It's not one of these paywall things. And again, if you're chasing something, just send me a quick note. I go to bed with a zero inbox, so just send me a quick LinkedIn message, and maybe I can drop you the 30-page report, or I can point you to somewhere that somebody's an expert that can answer it.
Excellent. We'll be sure to have that in the show notes. And also, as we wrap up, obviously, just like, drinking from a fire hose here, this area. But you also are quite a world traveler. And I've heard that you have a personal blog kind of highlighting that. As we wrap up, can you maybe close us out, share a little bit about that?
Yeah, my blog just hit 1 million views earlier this week.
Nice.
And it's just a personal story. I love cars. I love motorcycles. I love boats. Like all of us, we have hobbies outside of what we do for a living. Travel is one of them. And I originally set off to hit 100 countries. And there was a funny story. And it was like ranked up high in Google because I call it the Rollerblade and Red Bull Tour. And so I got sponsored by Red Bull for doing it and rollerblades and stuff, but just being a Canadian on skates. But it ended up being one of those bucket list things that you put out in there in the ether.
Uh-huh.
And we made it happen. So last year in Africa, we went to Madagascar, was my 100th country. So now I'm at 108. We're just getting ready next month to go to 15 more countries on the way to an Australia speech. So I kind of tell the story of, where and how. And by the way, we're dragging along kids also, whether it's Antarctica, they've been to 7 continents. They've been to 7 wonders of the world. And it's just this immersion education in travel You can read in a book, you can listen to a YouTube video, but the second you're there eating street meat in a back alley of some far-flung country, that is a different experience. So it's one of my personal things that I love to do.
That's awesome, and we'll be sure to have that blog in the show notes as well. Well, that is fantastic. Well, Jay, once again, thank you so much. This has been a whole lot of fun, and you just enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thank you so much.
Wow, that was an amazing interview. I felt like I drank from a fire hose.
I think any of our listeners are going to have to listen to this podcast 2 or 3 times to fully get all the information that Jay was telling us today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, just, hearing him talk about some of the growth, numbers, and just, breaking it into the eras, and then the fact that this $6.7 trillion industry looking to double, right, in the next few years, and just all the opportunities that's out there for our partners who are listening. But even in the midst of some of these really big numbers, that's sometimes hard to get your mind around. One of the numbers that really stood out to me was 6.3, and how just the importance to partners being really hyper focused, and being one of those, and when he's talking about the 6.3, around as customers will have 6.3 partners of trust where they'll get their info, and being one of those and being all in. That really stood out to me.
Yeah. Well, those 6.3 partners was really important metric that he mentioned, because you can build your own network and or community, as he mentioned it. And that's one of the things that we've espoused at IAMCP for a long time, is about building your circle of trust with other partners. And if you can do that, then you can become one of those 6.3 and then bring your partners in with you on future deals. So that was really important, about being focused and become a specialist in what you do, but then take a look at what your customer is building and the challenges they go through, so you can help them with their technology issues. So whether you're dealing with another technology partner or another business person out in the marketplace, that you could bring in and help your customers, achieve the outcomes that they want to achieve. And I especially like the one story he told about when you go up to a company, take a look at their guest books. That's one of my old tricks that I used to do. Hey, who else has been here? But that's one of the things that you do. And that's one of the things that I encourage partners to do, is to build your network. Build your network of people that you know in the technology world and in the business world, because then you can help your customers achieve the goals that they want to achieve. The other thing that he said is, you as a partner, and he talked about 82% of Microsoft partners are not ready for the world of AI. It's time. If you haven't started yet, it's time to dive into the world of AI and start figuring out how it's going to impact your business. And one of the ways it does is, our customers are becoming digital first. So what does that mean to you? You need to do that as well. So the content that you provide your customers on your website, how you participate in community, social communities like LinkedIn, that's another way you can get your information about your specializations out to the marketplace. So become digital first.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up too about like with digital first, because one of the other numbers that he mentioned was 28, and how there's 28 measurable moments in the purchase process, right? And for the buyer, and how important is it as the partner to really, one, understand that there's that many moments, right? But also to really be all in and participate in the where and how customers are influenced along those 28 measurable moments. And it's just part of that digital first. This is where they're getting information. I think Jay was talking about, at first, years ago, it was people would first go to search, now they're going to chat, and then it's just kind of unpacking, from there. So just the importance of having, that strong, digital presence in the form of, your brand, your content marketing, your consistent, digital communications. I just thought that was really, really key. And I hope a lot of partners take that to heart, as they continue to go out there, with their marketing efforts. So that was good.
There was so much. So if this is your first listening to this podcast, go back and listen again. A lot of good information for you. And tell your friends about it. All right. Well, for everyone who's listened to this podcast, we really want to thank you for joining us on this episode of IAMCP Profiles in Partnership, powered by Dunamis Marketing. We hope you enjoyed this podcast and find it useful and inspiring. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. One of the best ways to partner for success is to join IAMCP, a community of Microsoft partners who help each other grow and thrive. IAMCP members can find and connect with other partners locally and globally and access exclusive resources and opportunities. Whether you're looking for new customers, new markets, or new solutions, IAMCP can help you achieve your goals. To learn more, visit the website at www.iamcp.org.